Hello, and welcome to my channel, The Entrepreneurial Mindset. My name is Jay Berman, and today's presentation is called Essential CEO Concepts, Episode 1. The concepts in this video come from my book, Is Your Business Idea a Good Investment?, which is available on Amazon.com as Kindle version only. Go to the Amazon search bar, select books, type in my name, Jay Berman, scroll quickly to my book to purchase, and by doing so, you support my channel and my work in entrepreneurship and business education. Thank you. So today's essential CEO concept, just to remind you that CEO stands for Chief Executive Officer, and if you are starting your own business, you are the Chief Executive Officer. Today we're going to talk about competitive risks, corporate strategy, and competitive advantage. So what do I mean by competitive risk? So the competitive risk is the risk that the company's or your company's corporate strategy may not achieve the financial goals and generate a high rate of return for you, or perhaps you have investors, because competitors have insurmountable, very, very strong competitive advantage. And I'll talk about competitive advantages just a minute or so. So as the CEO or Chief Executive Officer, you are responsible for designing a corporate strategy, kind of like a grand plan, looking at the entire company from high up. So your company can compete in your industry. So just remember, if you can't compete, you lose. So the main components of a corporate strategy, the first one is to have some sort of strategic vision, which is basically describing the company you as the CEO want to create and how that company will compete. Are you going to compete as a wholesaler, as a retailer? Are you going to compete online? Those types of strategies. You need a mission statement, which is basically describing the business model by describing your company's products, the goods or services that you want to sell, and identifying the target market. In other words, who are going to be your typical buyers. And then what values is your company going to have, which is basically describing the policies the company will demonstrate in order to build trust with your customers. And then what are your objectives? In this case, results, your financial results that you want to achieve, such as rate of return, revenue, gross profit margin, operating expenses, operating profit margin, net income, and net profit margin. And if you're not familiar with these terms, I suggest you watch my accounting videos. I have a whole set of essential accounting concepts that you can watch if you want to be more familiar with accounting. And then you need to figure out, do you have any competitive advantages? The issue is, what is a competitive advantage? Well, it's basically an ability or a function that enables a company to be a formidable, strong, powerful competitor in its industry. In other words, it enables a company to earn higher profits than rivals in the same industry, a brand that customers simply prefer despite enormous efforts by competitors to persuade buyers to switch. And what are some of competitive advantages that companies have? The first one I always talk about is product design and innovation. In other words, some companies just have an amazing ability to create and deliver better goods and services to loyal customers. Maybe they have superior technology in terms of manufacturing, operations, advertising, customer retention. Maybe they just have stronger financial resources. In other words, they have more money in the bank. They make smarter asset investments. Maybe they have superior customer service. In other words, their customer service agents have well-trained and have superb product expertise and solutions. And then the workforce. So if you do have employees, you got to make sure they're well-trained and they're professional when serving customers. Now let's go into what we call generic corporate strategies. The first one would be a broad low-cost corporate strategy. This is where you have the lowest cost than rivals and appeals to a wide range of what we call price-conscious customers. In other words, these are customers where price is the priority for their purchases. And probably a best example of that would probably be Walmart. Amazon.com would be good examples because they both companies appeal to a very, very wide range, millions and millions of price-conscious customers. Then you have broad differentiation, seeks to differentiate goods or services to appeal to quality-conscious customers. I think a good example of this would probably be Apple. People who tend to buy Apple products, particularly Apple iPhones, computers, laptops, they tend to be more quality conscious customers because Apple products generally are more expensive. So that customer base, they're more interested in quality versus price. And you can have a focused low cost strategy, which is basically concentrates on a narrow buyer segment, what we would call a market niche, by having lower costs than rivals. In other words, they seek price-conscious buyers with unique product preferences. So this is a good market strategy if you have a product that's not widely available, that serves a particular niche. But again, people are still price-conscious when it comes to purchasing these products. Then there's a focus differentiation. This is what, again, very similar to the previous one, but it concentrates on a narrow buyer market segment called a market niche, and outcompetes rivals by offering customized products that meet their tastes and requirements. Customers are generally quality conscious. A good example of this would probably be like a hotel, high-end luxury hotel, like the Ritz-Carlton, where they provide unique hotel experiences for their guests. And then a best cost provider is kind of a combination of both the low cost provider and the differentiation strategy. In other words, you're giving customers more value for their money by exceeding their expectations on key features, performance, and prices. And again, this is usually a hybrid strategy that blends elements of the low cost provider and differentiation strategies. And that's all I have for today. Any questions or comments, use the comments section below. Subscribe to my channel for more educational content about entrepreneurship. And I thank you for watching.